Okay, it's a minute or so after 7, so let's go ahead and we can get started. Welcome everybody. I'm Stephen Green, RBC Royal Bank. The incredible mood lighting that you see right now is my basement. Unfortunately, it got a little bit busy today, and I did not have time to get back to my office where the lighting is much better. The good news is you're mostly going to be looking at the presentation and not my face with apparently a light halo over my head here. Yeah, sorry about the not great mood lighting that we've got here on my screen. Again, welcome everyone. Investment properties explained is what we're going to talk about tonight. Just so I know that everybody can hear me okay, if you can go towards the bottom of your screen, there's 3 buttons, and I believe the raise your hand button is in the middle. If you can click on that button right now for me, just so I know that you guys can all hear me. Got a few people there. That's excellent. Very good. And you can now hit the button again to put your hand down. Also at the very bottom, there's a Q&A button. If you see me looking to the left, it's because I've also got some other notes up on the screen. If you get the side view, that's what it is. And again, Q&A, if you have any questions, we'll try to answer them at the very end, and we'll go from there. So let's get started with investment properties and everything you ever wanted to know but was afraid to ask. So myself personally, there's not actually a slide in here, but I will let you know a little bit about myself. So again, Stephen Green, RBC Royal Bank. I am a mortgage specialist. So the really cool thing about RBC is that we do everything in specialists. And where that's really cool is you always get someone who does the same thing all day long. I deal with mortgages all day long. I go through different underwriters all day long. I understand the policies. I very much in the middle of the real estate world. So I kind of know what's happening and stuff like that, as opposed to, and there's nothing wrong with this other group of people, but as opposed to jack of all trades, master of none. I think there's positives to both completely. But I know for myself, like I said, I'm a specialist. It's what I do all day. And investing in real estate is something that I absolutely love. And I probably close to 80% of my business is investors, which is fantastic. I love first time home buyers because they're so excited. I definitely enjoy first time home buyers. But overall, when we look at it, investing in real estate, I personally love it. I love the numbers, the analytical side. So it's where I have a great deal of experience. So having said that, the reasons why people invest in real estate. Part of it is portfolio diversification. So I am a huge, huge proponent of having a balanced financial portfolio. I think it's really, really important that you do have what we refer to as liquidity coverage, some sort of liquidity in your portfolio, savings, RSP, stuff like that, to balance out everything. And I also tell people as well that gone are the days of having, $2 million in mortgages and 20 bucks in the bank. Those days are gone. The bank wants to know that you do have that balance. And I think you'll hear some shameless plugs as we go through this presentation, but shameless plug time. RBC definitely does do that, where we try to balance both sides of the balance sheet. But again, I think it's really important to be balanced. Rental income. Okay. So if you can provide yourself with some sort of passive income, that always helps, and as you get bigger and you mature as an investor, hopefully you have more passive income for your portfolio. One neat thing, my wife and I have done this, instead of selling your first home, keeping it as a rental property and then buying another home. Like I said, my wife and I, we did that. It was fantastic. We actually not recently, a couple of years ago, actually, we sold that house because we did realize the benefit of the money that we did make, and we put that towards other items to again grow the portfolio. it's definitely a neat way to do it. We are able to use rental income on the existing homes. You don't have to be able to afford both, but a lot of people are doing that. Another just very, very small side note, maybe where we take our first time home buyers and make them investors is in this crazy market, not all first time home buyers are getting their dream home right away. So sometimes what we have to recommend is find a home that you could probably rent later so that when you do build up some equity, you can buy something at maybe a higher price point, but at least just get in the market. Might not be perfect, but at least get into the market. So that's a strategy we use with first time home buyers that maybe are on the fence about it. Buy a home with the intention of renting later. Housing for a child away at school. Okay, so my wife and I are actually in this boat right now where we have 2 kids off to university in the next 2 or 3 years. I think we now go from, the life stage of saving to spending, but we'll see how that all goes. But, we're looking at that for our son. We're going to wait, make sure at least he likes the school he goes to. And, it's not a situation where we're buying it for 1 year and he decides he wants to transfer, because then you run into another issue. But there is that option as well. We do have a 5% down program. If you have proper documentation that your son or daughter is going away to school and you can afford it without rental income, we can do that program as well. Entry to the real estate market while living at home renting. So we do have, I think some lenders, and I don't know who, some lenders have a restriction whereby if you're living at home with parents, you can't purchase a rental property. We're okay with that. Like I said, some lenders have it, some don't. But it's the way times are changing. I do have quite a few clients that they haven't left home. I don't know why. I don't know how it all works, but they've built an incredible portfolio of investment properties, and that's what they're going to be living off of. So again, different ways or different reasons to invest in real estate. Okay, so this is really, really important. And I think my wife and I have gone through this. Is it right for you necessarily to even get into real estate or into renting, into investing in real estate is what I'm trying to say. Make sure you ask yourself that, and then make sure that you do budget, because you need to make sure that you've got that appetite, we'll say, to do the budgeting, to manage the portfolio, stuff like that. So a few things to look at: counting the costs. Okay. So it's not just the mortgage payment. And I think that's really, really important to understand. I think when people get into it, they keep it too simple. And then all of a sudden they've got this property that's simply not cash flowing. So estimate the rent. I can say from my experience, when we do an investment property, RBC, as part of the appraisal process, will ask for the fair market rent. In my experience, it's generally a little bit lower than what you're actually going to rent for. Having said that, as much as I always joke that the bank is a glass half empty type company, I think as an investor, I think you need to go more on the side of what happens if I don't get my wish list of what it's going to actually rent for. Because I think sometimes you're looking around, you're like, oh, I'd rent this for 2,000, but does your market actually allow for that? I can tell you right now, the house that my wife and I rented, that we kept as a rental and then moved, we thought we were going to get more. We just simply didn't. And so, yes, absolutely budget accordingly, but just remember, you might not get what you're expecting you're going to get. You got to do your research. Okay. Determining heating, property tax, and condo fees. Make sure you budgeted for that. Most single family homes, the tenant is paying the hydro and utilities and stuff. If you're into a duplex, triplex, it's normally the landlord. If you get into multi-tenants in the property, dare I say from who may or may not be going to post-secondary education, are you paying for some of those fees or not? It does say prudent to deduct 10% from rent for vacancy and maintenance. I think maintenance is more the issue. If it's not a single family home, management fees. So some of my clients are, I call them graduating from, smaller portfolios to bigger portfolios. How much of your life do you want to spend with your family instead of managing your property and collecting rent checks? That's a decision you need to make. But like I said, if you properly are planned and you've got a balanced portfolio and some money in the bank to back up your rental properties, this isn't too much of a big deal. I mean, I think definitely budget for it, but just know that you've got to have that on hand when needed because tenants break things or things go wrong. It's part of being a landlord. So okay, so qualification is very, very different when you're getting into rental properties than it is if you're buying you're an owner occupied home. Totally different. The bank looks at it. It's not a necessity. They want you to have skin in the game when you do this. Okay, so I think it's really, really important to understand that. There is minimum criteria. Okay, so generally, I don't know what the exact number is, but it's just over a 700 credit score, as an example. Can we get away with, between 680 and 700? Yeah, not unreasonable. I think once you start to get down 660, 650, 640, as an experienced lender, I can say there's something there that might be an issue that the bank may not like. So good credit history is definitely important. I also tell clients, I can control a lot of things, but your credit score when you walk into my office is not one of them. So you got to make sure that that is managed. Just a side note, if you do have RBC Royal Bank as your primary bank, we do have a service absolutely free, does not impact your credit score. You can go to our website and log in, obviously, into your online banking. Right side towards the bottom, check your credit score. You can get your full credit score with every single trade line balance when you opened it, free, updated once a month. It is tremendous. And I like that because it's a direct link to TransUnion, which is one of the credit agencies in Canada. So I tell people with the way the information is available to you these days, know your credit score, and know where things are. If you've got an established portfolio and you've got tenants, I think you got to check your credit score for a different reason. Has anything been taken over? When you have equity in your home, are there any seconds that have been registered? We're in that day and age where I know we're all about privacy, but there really isn't a whole heck of a lot of it. So manage your credit score. Minimum 20% down for any investment property purchase. We do look at total debt servicing. Okay. So there's different models for investment properties and calculations and stuff like that. To put it completely simple for RBC, it's all the income, including the rental income, divided by all of your debt and expenses. That's an oversimplification, but that's kind of what it is. Okay. So we do look at total debt servicing. If you have rental properties in your portfolio that are not cash flowing, it will hurt in any bank's metrics. Okay, so really important that you know that when you're buying rental properties, you've got cash flow. Okay, banks don't like that very much if there's not. We do look at leverage across all your properties. Okay, so the bank has gone to this model mainly because of GTA Vancouver. They've kind of ruined it for the rest of us. I don't know if there's anyone on from Toronto, but I thought I would just mention that with the up and down that has been there. We look at the overall loan to value. So, if you're buying one property at 20% down or 80% loan to value, are any of your other properties, have they dropped in value whereby you're now heavily leveraged? Okay. We don't run into this too often, but it is something that the bank looks at because we don't want people to have a really heavily leveraged portfolio. Liquidity coverage. So again, no more having 20 bucks in the bank and $2 million in mortgages. Those days are gone. When people say, well, I have a really high equity position, that's great, but that means that helps under your overall loan to value that we just spoke about. Okay. I had an underwriter put it to me very, very well one time when I said, well, they've got great assets, they have great loan to value. And they said, well, you can't get cash from bricks and mortar. I'm like, that's a really good way to put it. Right. So again, we're not looking for millionaires, but you got to have something to back up your portfolio. And there's not a hard number because I think it depends on the client, but you definitely want some money in the bank because that's something we look for. Okay, so picking a property, just some key questions to ask. I don't, as long as you are working with a qualified realtor, who I think understands cash flow and investment properties and what it's like to invest, I find that you have less likelihood of making a mistake on a property. Let's put it that way. I think it's really important that your realtor does the due diligence. And if you ever need a real estate agent, let me know. I know some fantastic ones that understand this stuff. Um, so again, look at the property as an investor as opposed to an owner, because again, you don't want the emotion, right? And that's maybe something I like about investment properties. There's no emotion. Either numbers work or they don't work. So that's something I quite enjoy. And I think investors who really get into it, they love that too. So what type of tenant are you likely to attract? Is this going to be a good tenant, a bad tenant? Is it going to be a family? Um, and you have a 4-bedroom house, so it's going to be a family with 6 kids and 3 dogs, or is it a 2-bedroom or a 1-bedroom home that's going to attract, a Google employee or a tech? We get that quite a bit in Kitchener-Waterloo. So a Google employee or a tech person or a single person or whatever. So what kind of tenant do you want to manage, right? Is it a high demand location? So again, I'll talk about KW. I believe Hamilton is going through now their rapid transit. There's another city as well, but is it a high demand area? I can say right now in KW, anything around that LRT, which is now running, went up in price exponentially because everyone wants to be by the LRT, right? Is this type of property is the type of property that will be easy to rent out? In other words, are you going to have high vacancy, right? It's something you want to look at. And who's going to manage it? I won't go down too far this road, but if you have one or like my wife, we've had a couple of rental properties, no big deal. Um, e- at the time, single family homes were quite easy to cash flow. And so we had a couple of single families in there. They always paid, knock on wood, they always paid their rent on time, right? And it was very easy. But I have some clients now who have 5 and 6 rental properties, and when they're coming back for additional financing, we're running into issues because they don't have control over what's going on, or their taxes aren't getting done right because they're not documenting, etc. So do you need to hire someone, pay the money because you have a great cash flowing property to manage your property? And that's something that it's going to be up to everybody. So, okay, financing investment properties. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee here. So property types. So these are the types of properties that RBC will finance. And I should say, with RBC, we do have, obviously, so I'm an RBC employee, I'm an RBC mortgage specialist. My first priority is to put the financing with RBC. Having said that, if there's an opportunity, or if there's something that we can't finance, we do have the alternative mortgage solutions, also an RBC program. And he can try to, his name's Rocco. He can try to get the deal done through an alternative lender, Home Trust, Bridgewater, Equitable, Magenta. There's just different lenders out there that can sometimes help. So, and it's a one-stop shop, which is really cool. So property types, owner occupied. So as long as it's owner occupied, we can do it 1 to 4 unit. Second property is when rental income is used to qualify. So we have this quite a bit now where clients are looking for homes. They can't afford it anymore. So they're looking for homes with multi-residential with, we'll call it mortgage helpers, right? So if I'm to buy a triplex, live in one of the units, the other 2 units, when we service the debt, because it's owner occupied, we can use 50% of the rental income on the other 2 units. Okay, so we're running into this a lot more because houses are just so darn expensive. So definitely an option to use rental income to help service the mortgage. 1 to 4 unit non-owner occupied. So that's pretty standard across the board. This is kind of cool. And now we're getting into maybe some RBC exclusives here. We can do up to and including a 6-plex as long as it's residentially zoned. under residential line of business. As far as I know, we're like probably one of the only ones doing that, if not the only one. I'm sure there's some lender somewhere doing it also, but I think we're like the only one. So as long as it's residentially zoned, we'll do up to and including a 6. Okay, pretty cool. Only residential properties. I'm not into commercial. I tried commercial banking one time, couldn't do it. Bored as you know what, because it's like a 6-7 month turnaround. I'm good with residential. Okay, so I should probably rejig this term, but I'll address it. So the bank did clarify last, I believe it was in April of last year, what our appetite was for properties that may have individuals that are going to post-secondary education. So as long as the property, and I am at the mercy of the appraiser, okay, as long as when the appraiser goes in there, he or she deems the property as a single family home, we are okay with student tenants, okay? Within reason though, okay? So, if you've got 4 individuals that happen to be on the same lease and they're renting a home, which is single family, there's no modifications, it's not the living room's not a bedroom, it's very simple, then we're okay with that. I've had applications where there's 7 people in the house. That one we're not really too crazy about. That's a lot of individuals in one house. But as long as they're all in the same lease, then we're okay. So, if you are getting into these types of properties, let's talk some more. I understand that the slide does say 6 units. That has changed a little bit as to what the appetite is. So if you are getting into those properties, let me know, and we can talk more about what we'd be looking at. No rooming houses. So if you have multiple tenants on multiple leases that are renting rooms, we are not into that at all. Just not something RBC has an appetite for. And yes, appraisals are mandatory. We must do them. We can't order an appraisal until we have an accepted offer. Okay, so as soon as the offer is in, I get the offer, I can order the appraisal right away. Okay, but yes, we do have to do an appraisal for rental properties. Okay, I get this one a lot. Ownership structure. So you can own it in your own names, totally fine. We will look at a personal holding company, okay, to hold title on the property, with the individuals as either guarantors or co-borrowers not on title. But in the end, the corp holds title mainly for taxation and liability. That's really the main benefits of this. There isn't really much else, okay? And when I say that, it's a great way to do it. But as long as you know it's from taxation and liability, because our mortgages are still going to show up on your credit bureau. Okay, it's still a personal guarantee. So a couple of things to keep in mind. The company is not an operating company or a partnership. Okay, so in other words, the individuals must be related. Okay, and we have a list of relationships that are allowed. So if you and your next door neighbor over a couple of cold beverages think, hey, let's go buy an investment property and stick it in a holding corporation, we can't honor that because you're not related. Okay, so immediate family, moms, dads, grandparents, no third cousins from the first marriage of your first wife's daughter does not count. The bank, again, we're glass half empty type people. Is there a way to prove it? No, but we do want to verify that. Owners of the company must qualify based on their personal financial picture. So in other words, it's not based on the corporation. It's completely based on you. Can you qualify for it? Okay. Company is legally permitted to borrow funds. Your accountant or lawyer can talk to you about that. The only thing, and this is where RBC starts to get very strict, because we're offering this really cool program under residential line of business with residential terms and residential rates. It is limited to residential real estate holdings and investments. In other words, when we do a holdco mortgage, you have to sign a paper that that you attest to the fact that this corp will never own commercial properties, not even its ones we're financing, a commercial property at all. If we find out about it, we can call the mortgage. Like, that's how strict it is, because you're getting such great benefits as part of this mortgage. Okay. Shareholders must be individuals. So in other words, and a lot of accountants love to do it. It's great, just doesn't fit our program, where they've got an opco, a realco, a holdco, and each one, by the time you get to the holdco, it's owned by two other corporations. We're just not into that under residential line of business. The shareholders must be the individuals. Okay, so the husband and wife, or the husband or the kid, or whatever the case may be, but it must be the individuals who are the shareholders. This is very, very important. Okay. And to wrap a bow on this, do not take my advice and go out and start a corporation when this webinar is done. Ask your accountant, ask your lawyer, is it the right thing? I am not by any means saying go out, spend $2,000, start a corporation, and then I'll give you a mortgage. That's not where we're going with this. Talk to your accountant, talk to your lawyer. You may not need this. Some people do, some people don't. But I am not the one giving you the advice to go out and do it. And that is my disclaimer for tonight on holdcos. Moving right along. Common questions. So again, looking at the property as an investor rather than an owner. Appraisals. Okay, so I get a lot of individuals who are doing the BRRRR strategy. I don't even know what all the R's stand for, but it's like buy, renovate, rent, renovate, refinance. I don't know. There's a bunch of R's in there. It depends who you ask what their BRRRR strategy is. It's very important to understand that if you are going to refinance and pull equity, if you think your house is worth now, you bought it for 400 and you think it's worth 700, you have to ask yourself if the market has caught up to that. So I have some clients that are doing refis and they're upset that they bought for 4. They think it's worth 7, and it very well may be, but the comps have not caught up and it's only worth 5 or 550. Like, when appraisers do their due diligence, I've heard, well, appraisers are always low. I don't think the appraisals are always low. I just think that sometimes investors are so aggressive, which is good. That's not a bad thing, but they're so aggressive that the market hasn't caught up to what they want from a value perspective. So having said that, you have to do your homework as to whether or not the investment you're putting in to BRRRR the thing out or renovate or refinance is actually going to be realized in the timeline you're expecting. Okay. So to just keep that in mind when we're talking about appraisals. The other part of appraisal, I'm just going to look and see if it's later on here. No. So they're part of appraisals. Keep this in mind. The bank will only mortgage to either the purchase price or the appraised value, whichever is less. So if you're doing a new purchase in this crazy market, you got to go firm. Your call, by the way. Bank can never say go firm. And you are buying, it was listed for 400,000 and you bought for 500, and we appraise and it's only worth 450. We'll give you a mortgage to 450, but you have to come up with the extra 50,000 on your own. Okay, so that's really important with an investment property in particular, because that's going to impact your cash flow and your liquidity coverage and a whole bunch of other stuff if you have the money to do it. Okay, so keep that in mind with appraisals. Existing rental income on an application. So I get asked a lot, what percentage of offset or add to income do you use? Depending on who you ask, there's different ways people refer to as add to income or gross or offset or whatever. Long story short, we will, if it's an existing rental property and it's verifiable, very key term here, we will use 100% of the rental income for an existing non-subject rental property on the application. A new purchase will use 80%. Okay, so that's important to understand as well. Current state versus plan. So the bank, if you're going to do a great renovation project, fantastic, you can do it. Um, uh, or if it's being built or whatever the case may be, but the bank will only go on the current state of the property. So if if you have plans to do stuff, make it a duplex or whatever, that's great. But the bank's only going to mortgage to the current state of the property. Okay. Yes, the property has to be 100% complete. Absolutely, when we do this, it has to be 100% complete to do any sort of mortgage through the investment property stream. Talked about student properties, commercial zoning. We're not into at all. Mixed use, also not into. Firm approvals. So the cool thing with RBC, when we do an approval, okay, we will do all the due diligence. So you put in the condition of financing. Before you waive your condition of financing, we check all your docs. We do the full appraisal on the property. We send it to the underwriter. Once everyone's got a check mark, as long as you don't change the property or you want more money from a mortgage perspective, you're firm, you're approved, it's your property. We don't go back on it. Even if you're buying a builder deal 2-3 years out, as long as you don't change the property, as long as you don't change the mortgage amount, you're firm. Go buy 5 cars, don't care. You're firm. Okay, that's really, really important. Investors love it. Number of properties. Okay, so I get this question a lot. How many properties can we own? I'm going to start to tell you what it is, but don't get excited until you hear the whole thing. So you can own 9 properties. Okay, but max of those 9, 5, maybe 6 investor properties. So if you have a cottage or you have your own owner occupied home, a cottage, and a condo for your kid at school, you can still own 5, maybe 6 investor. Okay, so that's really, really important. Are we seeing flexibility on that? Yes and no. But 5 or 6 is about the max we'd look at under RBC. And by the way, it's not just RBC mortgages. If you have 5 at CIBC and you come to us, you're maxed out. Okay, so it's mortgages for any bank. Before you buy, get pre-approved. I say pre-approved because with investor mortgages, we don't really do an official pre-approval only because there's so many variables involved. Rental income, property type, property taxes. There's a lot of different variables. We can say the numbers look really good and you can go ahead and put a condition of financing, but we try to give you as good of an idea as we possibly can. Okay. Understand what you can afford. We do do the rate locks for up to 120 days, which means you have to close within 120 days, not come and see me in 90 days and say, oh, by the way, I need to do this in 2 more months. We can still do your mortgage, but we'll probably have to repull credit bureaus and relock your rate. Okay. Review your financial plan. Understand this is really, really critical. Do some homework on understanding the landlord and tenant laws in your area. Okay. Because when you got to start issuing N1s, N4s, and going to the tenant and landlord board, which I have one client going through that right now. He's trying to apply for a mortgage and the rental income is a little bit off and we're struggling with it. So make sure you understand your rights. He's dealing with it very, very well, but there is a process. Again, seek out a professional real estate agent who understands rentals. I think that's really, really important. You want an agent that can work off numbers and stuff like that as opposed to emotion. Do we still get home inspections these days? I think we do. So if you can get an inspection, get it inspected. Pay the money. Pay the money for someone good. If you need a referral for a home inspector or a great real estate agent, you let me know. I know the good ones. Okay. And the most exciting part of the whole presentation, my shameless plugs. So if you need to get a hold of me, Facebook and Twitter. Do we still use Twitter? That's another one. Home inspections and Twitter. We're still doing those, right? Instagram, definitely have that available to you. I do have a YouTube channel. Okay, so past webinars, my Steven in 60 Seconds, that's all available. And I have the really cool Green Effect podcast where we don't just talk about mortgages and stuff like that. We talk about finance, life, business. I've had Olympians on, I've had home inspectors on, lawyers. I've had, oh goodness, I've had my club's personal trainers have been on there. So it's more than just finance. 'Cause if I had to talk about mortgages all day, I don't know what I would do. So there's a lot more cool stuff. Make sure you like me, love me, follow me, subscribe to me. I don't know, all that sort of stuff. So, and so the next slide, I believe, is questions, but I'll leave this up for now. So if you do have a question, bottom bottom of the screen towards the right, there's a Q&A button. Hit the button and ask away. I'll just give it a minute in case people are typing. Okay, so we don't seem to have any questions, so I'm going to end it there. If you have any questions at all, please feel free. Like I said, you got all these ways to reach out to me. Reach on out, and we can definitely chat and see what we need to do for you. Other than that, enjoy your evening. I hope you got something out of this webinar, and until next time, we will talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody.